The neutral station of Veralia floated like a silent giant in the middle of black space. From a distance, it looked calm. Lights glowed softly, docking bays opened and closed, and ships came and went without much noise. But inside, tension was heavy. The war between the two alien factions, the Sarathi and the Kolvar, had lasted for years. Humans were newcomers to this part of the galaxy, and they had stayed neutral. But Veralia was the one place where all three species could meet without trying to kill each other. Captain Elias Rourke, representing the United Terran Fleet, sat at a long, shining table inside the main diplomatic hall. His role was simple: watch, listen, and make sure humans didn't accidentally step into the war. He wasn't here to make peace. That was someone else's job. The table was filled with alien delegates, their clothes rich with symbols and colors humans didn't fully understand. The Sarathi wore smooth, layered robes that shimmered like silver water. The Kolvar wore hard, scale-like armor even in peaceful meetings, their eyes narrow and suspicious. The dinner was silent except for the soft clinking of alien cutlery and the low hum of the station's air systems. Elias didn't like silence. Silence meant people were thinking too much about the wrong things. He glanced to his right. Sitting there was a tall Sarathi woman, her skin pale silver with faint blue lines tracing across it like living veins of light. Her hair, or what he thought was hair, moved slightly, like strands of soft metal. She hadn't looked at him once. Elias decided to break the tension. "You know," he said in a calm voice, "on Earth we have a saying. If the food, is too quiet, it means it's planning something." A few heads turned toward him. No one reacted at first. Then, to his surprise, the Sarathi woman next to him made a short, soft sound. It grew into a gentle laugh, light and clear like water flowing over stones. Everyone else at the table seemed surprised. Sarathi were known for their calm, almost emotionless public behavior. Laughter was rare in diplomatic settings. The woman turned her head slightly toward him, her bright eyes meeting his for the first time. "Your people make jokes? During war?" she asked. Her voice was smooth, but there was something curious in it, like she truly wanted to know. Elias smiled faintly. "We make jokes especially during war. If we didn't, we'd all go crazy." For a moment, the heavy air in the room seemed lighter. Some of the Kolvar delegates glanced at each other as if wondering what was so funny. The Sarathi woman gave a small nod, as though filing his answer away for later thought. The rest of the meal continued in the same slow, careful rhythm, but Elias could feel that something had changed. The Sarathi woman occasionally glanced at him now, as if she had found a puzzle piece she hadn't been looking for. When the plates were cleared and the final formalities were done, the delegates stood to leave. Elias rose with them, preparing to return to his assigned quarters. But before he could step away, the Sarathi woman moved closer. Her movements were graceful, silent. She leaned in just enough that only he could hear her. "Are you free this evening?" she asked softly. Elias froze for half a second. His mind raced. The question could mean anything in alien culture. A personal meeting, a political discussion, maybe even a trap. Before he could answer, she straightened and walked away with her fellow Sarathi delegates, leaving him standing in the middle of the hall with more questions than he had arrived with. He watched her silver figure disappear through the archway. One thing was certain: this was not just about a joke. Something was happening, and Elias had just stepped into the middle of it. Elias spent the rest of the afternoon thinking about the Sarathi woman's question. "Are you free this evening?" The words stayed in his mind like a song he couldn't stop hearing. On the surface, it was a simple question. But in alien culture, especially among the Sarathi, even simple things could mean something complicated. The Sarathi were formal and cautious. They didn't ask questions without reason, and they didn't waste words. An invitation from one of them, especially outside official meetings, could be important. It could also be dangerous. He sat alone in the observation lounge, watching the dark space beyond the station windows. Stars shone like cold, distant fires. Cargo ships drifted slowly in the docking ring below. Everything looked peaceful from here, but Elias knew the war was still raging just a few light years away. His communicator buzzed. It was Lieutenant Mara, his second in command on this mission. Her voice came through sharp and serious. "Sir, I heard a rumor. One of the Sarathi delegates spoke to you after dinner?" Elias leaned back in his seat. "You hear everything too fast, Mara. It's my job. And I also hear she asked if you were free tonight. That's not normal, sir. The Sarathi don't hang out after work." "I know." Elias rubbed his temple. "What do you think it means?" "Could be a cultural exchange, could be politics, could be trouble. If you go, I'd suggest taking someone with you." Elias thought for a moment, then shook his head. "If I show up with backup, it sends the wrong message. I'll go alone." Mara sighed. "Just keep your comm link open, sir." Evening came slowly on Veralia Station. The station didn't have a real day-night cycle, but lights dimmed in most public areas to give the illusion of night. The long corridors felt quieter, and the constant background chatter of traders and travelers faded into a low hum. Elias waited in the spot where the Sarathi delegates' quarters were located. The air here smelled faintly of some kind of sweet metal. The scent of Sarathi perfumes, he guessed. He didn't have to wait long. The silver-skinned woman appeared from a side corridor, wearing a dark, flowing robe instead of the formal silver attire from earlier. Her hair metal strands glimmered faintly under the lights. "You came?" she said softly. "You invited," Elias replied. She gave the smallest smile, almost hidden, then turned and started walking without another word. Elias followed. They moved through several public corridors before turning into a narrow maintenance hallway. The walls here were plain metal, the lights dimmer. The station's normal visitors didn't come this way. "Where are we going?" Elias asked. "To a place where we can speak without being watched," she replied without turning around. That answer made his instincts tighten. On a neutral station like Veralia, privacy was rare, and almost everything was monitored. Anyone wanting to avoid watchers usually had a reason, sometimes good, sometimes very bad. They passed several closed doors marked with alien script. Then she stopped in front of one and placed her palm against a small glowing panel. The door slid open with a quiet hiss. Inside, the room was small but clean, lit by a single soft light in the ceiling. A table stood in the center, with 2 chairs. On the walls, there were strange markings, not written words, but patterns that looked almost like maps or battle plans. She motioned for him to sit. "My name is Sariva," she said as she took the other chair. "I know yours." Elias Rourke, human liaison, decorated in the Rift Border incident. "You were also at the peace attempt on Eris 4. Elias raised an eyebrow. "You've been reading my file." "I read many files, but yours interested me." She leaned forward slightly. "Your people have a way of surviving in situations where others would fall apart. You make jokes when others are silent. You keep moving when others give up." He shrugged. "That's how humans are. We don't know when to stop trying." Sariva's eyes narrowed slightly, as if measuring his words. "My people are losing this war. The Kolvar fight with numbers. We fight with precision. But both sides bleed and both sides are breaking. The War Council says peace is impossible. I disagree." Elias kept his face calm. "And you think humans can help?" "I think you can help," she said simply. "You speak to both sides without fear. The Kolvar see you as unpredictable. My people see you as strange, but not an enemy. That makes you valuable." Elias leaned back in his chair. "Why not go through official channels?" "Because official channels are watched. And because, if I am wrong about you, I need only risk myself, not my entire council." For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The soft hum of the station's air systems was the only sound. Finally, Elias said, "You're asking me to step into your war. I'm here to keep humans out of it." "I am asking you to step into a chance for peace," she replied. "And if I am wrong, you can walk away, and no one will know." Elias studied her face. There was no sign of deception that he could see, just determination and perhaps a hint of desperation. He exhaled slowly. "All right, I'll listen, but if I don't like what I hear, I'm gone." Scifi gave a small nod, as if expecting that answer. She stood, and so did he. "Then follow me," she said. "There is someone you must meet." She opened another door at the back of the room, revealing yet another dim corridor. As Elias stepped through, he had a feeling that whatever lay ahead was going to be far more than a simple evening meeting. The new corridor was even darker than the last. The walls were bare metal, with only a few thin lines of light running along the floor. It felt less like part of a public station and more like the inside of a ship under repair. Elias followed, Scifi without speaking. He kept his senses sharp, counting turns in his head, noting the direction they were going. It was an old habit from his days in combat. Never walk blind into unknown territory without leaving yourself a way back. Scifi moved quickly, her long robe brushing against the floor. Her steps made no sound, which made Elias even more aware of his own boots echoing faintly in the narrow space. They passed closed hatches, each marked with alien symbols. Elias didn't recognize the writing, but the occasional warning sign in trade language told him enough. Maintenance only. Restricted zone. Authorized personnel. "This part of the station doesn't seem very official," Elias said after a while. "It isn't," Scifi replied. "These corridors are not on the public maps. The engineers who built Veralia left many unused sections. Most are forgotten. A few are useful to those who know where to look." Elias didn't like the sound of that. Hidden places always had two types of people: those avoiding trouble and those causing it. After several minutes, Scifi stopped, in front of a round, sealed door. She pressed her palm to a small panel, and a soft blue light scanned her hand. The door opened with a slow hiss. They stepped into a space that looked nothing like the sterile hallways outside. The room was wide, with curved walls covered in cables and machinery. A faint, warm light came from overhead panels. In the center was a long table with scattered data pads and maps. 3 other Sarathi stood around it. They turned as Scifi entered. "This is him," she said simply, motioning to Elias. "Captain Elias Rourke, human liaison." The tallest of the 3, an older Sarathi male with deep blue markings on his skin, looked Elias over carefully. His voice was low but firm. "We do not usually involve outsiders in our work. I'm not usually involved in other people's wars," Elias replied. "But I was told you might be looking for peace." One of the others, a younger Sarathi woman with short metallic hair, spoke sharply. "Peace is a word. Words do not stop Kolvar weapons." Scifi stepped forward. "No, but trust can stop them. And humans are good at building trust, even with enemies." The older Sarathi frowned. "Why should we trust him?" Elias could feel their eyes studying him like he was a weapon they weren't sure was safe to use. He kept his tone steady. "You shouldn't, not yet. But I'm here. That means I'm at least willing to listen." There was a pause. Then the older Sarathi gave a small nod. "Very well, sit." Elias took a seat at the table, scanning the maps. They weren't of the whole war front, just certain key star systems. There were highlighted points that seemed to be contested zones, and others marked with strange circular patterns, Scifi explained. "These points are where the war burns hottest. Both sides send fleets again and again. Each time more die and nothing changes." She tapped one of the circular marks. This is a relay hub. If it falls, the side that loses it will suffer a major defeat. The Kolvar are preparing to strike here in 2 weeks. Elias studied the data. So you want me to stop the battle? No, Scifi said. We want you to reach the Kolvar first. Speak to them. Convince them that this fight will cost them more than it is worth. Elias almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it sounded impossible. You think I can walk into a Kolvar fleet and just talk them down? They will listen to you more than they will listen to us, Scifi said. The Kolvar know you as a survivor from the Rift Border incident. They respect survival. They may give you a hearing, even if they do not trust you. The younger Sarathi shook her head. This is dangerous. If the Kolvar suspect deception, they will kill him before he finishes a sentence. Elias leaned back in his chair. That's true. But if you think this war can be stopped with a conversation, I'll hear the plan. The older Sarathi pushed a small device toward him. This is a communication cipher. With it, you can speak on a private channel to certain Kolvar commanders. Without it, you'll be ignored, or worse. Elias picked it up, feeling the weight in his palm. If I take this, I'm in. Scifi met his eyes. Yes, and once you are in, there is no safe way out. They spent the next hour going over the details. The plan was simple in outline, but risky in execution. Elias would travel to a Kolvar-controlled sector, contact their command using the cipher, and request a private meeting under the guise of neutral intelligence exchange. If they accepted, he would try to convince them that attacking the relay hub would trigger a chain of events leading to greater losses for both sides. The Sarathi would then secretly signal readiness for a ceasefire in that sector. It sounded fragile. It was fragile. But sometimes fragile was the only option left. When the meeting ended, Scifi led Elias back to the corridor. They walked in silence for several turns before she finally spoke. You asked earlier where we were going, she said. Now you know. I know where, Elias said. Still not sure I know why you picked me. Sariva's voice was calm. Because in the dining hall, you made me laugh, and my people have forgotten how to laugh. If you can do that to me, maybe you can do it to a Kolvar commander. Elias shook his head slightly. That's the most dangerous job offer I've ever gotten. She gave the faintest smile. Then you understand why I asked if you were free this evening. They stepped back into the brighter, more populated parts of the station. Elias noticed how quickly Sariva's expression changed. In public, her face was as still and calm as any other Sarathi. No one who passed them would guess the conversation they'd just had. But Elias knew. And he also knew that tonight had just pulled him far deeper into this war than he had ever planned to go. He sat in his small quarters aboard Virelia Station, staring at the dim ceiling lights. The plan Scifi had explained kept replaying in his head. It wasn't just risky. It was the kind of mission that could go wrong in 100 different ways, and yet he had said yes. In the morning, a quiet knock came at his door. When he opened it, Scifi stood there wearing her formal silver robes again. Anyone watching would think this was just another polite meeting between delegates. Follow me, she said simply. They walked through the busier sections of the station, past shops, food stalls, and groups of travelers speaking in dozens of different languages. Scifi didn't speak until they reached a private lift near the far end of the diplomatic wing. She pressed her hand to a panel, and the doors slid open. Inside the lift, the air felt cooler. The walls were plain steel. No decorations. Scifi tapped a sequence of glowing symbols on the control screen, and the lift began to move. But not in a way Elias expected. Instead of going up or down, he felt it sliding diagonally, like it was cutting through parts of the station most people never entered. After a minute, the lift stopped. The doors opened into a dim hallway with thick walls and no windows. This way, Scifi said. The hallway led to another sealed door, guarded by two Sarathi in dark armor. They stepped aside without a word when Sariva approached. The door opened, and Elias stepped into a chamber unlike any place he had seen before on the station. It was large, maybe 50 meters across, with a high ceiling supported by curved metal beams. The walls were lined with screens, maps, and holographic displays showing star systems, fleet positions, and strange coded messages scrolling in alien script. At the center of the room was a large round table made of black stone. Around it sat a group of people, not only Sarathi, but also a few humans, and even two members of a smaller alien species Elias didn't recognize. "This is our true council," Sariva said quietly. "Not the official one the galaxy sees." Elias stepped forward, taking in the scene. The people around the table were focused, speaking in low voices, moving markers across the holographic maps. One of the human delegates, a man in his late 40s with a weathered face, looked up at Elias and gave a nod. "So this is the man you've brought in, Sariva?" "Yes," she replied. "He's agreed to hear the full plan." The man stood and extended a hand. "Name's Donovan, Terran Intelligence." Elias shook his hand. "I didn't know Intelligence had people working here." "That's because we keep it that way," Donovan said with a faint smirk. A Sarathi woman at the table tapped a console, and one of the holographic maps shifted to a single star system. Elias recognized it, the one Sariva had shown him before, with the relay hub. "This is our critical point," the woman said. "If the Kolvar take the hub, they will cut off our supply lines in this region. But if we can convince them not to attack, the Sarathi Council will have enough breathing room to push for a larger ceasefire." Donovan added, "The official channels are useless. Too many spies, too many people who don't actually want peace. That's why we work here. Off the books." Elias studied the map. "And you're all sure the Kolvar will listen to me?" "No one is sure," Sariva said. "But you have two things we don't: unpredictability and no direct ties to our command structure. That makes you harder to read and harder to accuse of deception." Elias folded his arms. "Or it makes me easier to kill if they don't like what I have to say." "That risk is understood," Sariva said calmly. Another Sarathi at the table, an older man with pale markings, leaned forward. "If you fail, the war will continue as it has. If you succeed, you may stop thousands of deaths in a single battle. Are those odds worth it to you?" Elias thought for a moment. "They're worth it to someone." The group spent the next 2 hours explaining the finer details. The Hidden Council had access to intelligence feeds from both Sarathi and human networks. They had identified which Kolvar commanders might be willing to listen. The cipher device Elias had been given would connect him to one of them, Commander Varric, known for being cautious and valuing efficiency over unnecessary loss of life. The meeting ended with a final decision. Elias would leave the station, in 2 days aboard a small, unmarked courier ship. He would travel under false registry to a neutral asteroid outpost near Kolvar territory. There, he would send the coded message requesting the meeting. When they left the chamber, Elias glanced back one last time. The people at the table were already deep in discussion again, shifting maps, moving pieces. It felt like watching a game, played with lives instead of stones. As the lift carried them back toward the public levels of the station, Elias finally spoke. "Why show me all this? You could have kept me in the dark, just sent me out with basic instructions." Sariva looked at him with a calm, steady gaze. "Because if you are to stand before a Kolvar commander and speak for peace, you must believe it matters. Not just to me, but to everyone in that room." Elias gave a short nod. "I believe it matters. I'm just not sure I believe it will work." Sariva's expression softened slightly. "Then perhaps you will have to be the one to make it work." When the lift doors opened and they stepped back into the bright, crowded corridors of the station, it felt almost unreal, like the quiet war room below was part of another world entirely. Elias walked away with the weight of the mission pressing on him, knowing that in 2 days he would leave the safety of Veralia and step into enemy space armed with nothing but words. And somewhere deep inside, a thought kept repeating, "If I fail, no one will ever know how close peace might have been." The morning sun of the artificial Veralia station glowed faintly through the observation windows. For most people, it was another ordinary day. But for Elias, it was the last calm hour before a storm he could not see. He packed his travel bag, slowly, checking the cipher device, his comm link, and the small maps the hidden council had provided. Every item had a purpose. Every mistake could cost him everything. Scifi arrived just as he finished. She wore her formal silver robes, though the brightness of the station made them almost shimmer. Elias studied her face. She looked calm, almost serene, the picture of confidence. "You're ready," she said. "I think so," Elias replied, though he knew that thinking so and actually being ready were different things. Scifi nodded and motioned for him to follow. They walked through the familiar corridors toward the docking bays. The station was quiet this early. Traders and diplomats would not begin their work for hours. Before they reached the bay, the alarm system suddenly blared, sharp, loud, and urgent. Red lights flashed along the walls. "What is it?" Elias asked, his pulse quickening. Sariva's eyes narrowed. "Security breach. Someone may have discovered our chamber." Within moments, a group of armed Sarathi stormed into the corridor. They moved fast, with precision. Elias felt the tension tighten around him like a vice. One of the officers, a tall, male with armored plating, spoke quickly. "Sir, we intercepted unauthorized communication. Unknown parties are trying to access restricted sectors." Elias swallowed. "Could they be targeting the hidden council?" "Possibly," Scifi said, her voice steady but low. "We do not know yet. We must move fast." They quickened their pace, running toward the dock where Elias's small courier ship waited. As they moved, Elias realized how fragile the entire plan was. One wrong step, one suspicious guard, and the mission could fail before it began. When they reached the docking bay, the courier ship was ready. Small, sleek, almost invisible against the massive station walls. Scifi handed Elias a small satchel containing personal essentials and additional data pads. "You have everything?" she asked. Elias nodded. "Yes, but what about you?" Scifi hesitated, then shook her head. "I cannot leave. The council needs protection. You carry the chance for peace. I will stay here and make sure the information reaches the right people if you fail." He felt a lump in his throat. "Then this really is up to me." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Yes. And remember, Elias, trust is your strongest weapon. Not fear, not force. Trust." Elias nodded again, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on him. The docking bay doors opened, revealing the vast blackness of space. Stars stretched endlessly in all directions. Elias climbed into the cockpit of the courier ship and strapped himself in. The hum of the engines vibrated through the small cabin. Scifi remained at the edge of the bay. "May your words be stronger than their weapons," she said softly. The ship lifted off, moving through the bay and into open space. Elias watched as Veralia Station receded behind him, a small shining dot against the void. He tried not to think about what he had left behind. The hidden chamber, the council, Scifi herself. Each step away was a step into danger. Hours later, Elias approached the neutral asteroid outpost near Kolvar space. The outpost was small and unremarkable. A few docking arms, storage bays, and minimal personnel. To outsiders, it looked like a simple supply station. He docked the courier quietly and waited until night cycle lights dimmed most activity. With the cipher device in hand, he sent a secure message to Commander Varric, requesting a private meeting. The message was short, precise, and neutral, designed to provoke curiosity without anger. Almost immediately, a response came. Accepted. Approach cautiously. Elias felt a rush of relief, but it was tempered by the reality of what lay ahead. One wrong phrase, one mistrusted word, and the Kolvar could attack without hesitation. He suited up for the shuttle, the small craft that would take him directly to the meeting point. The hangar was silent, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer than usual. Every sound of metal against metal, every step, felt magnified. As he lifted off, the small shuttle navigated past asteroid debris and automated defenses. The tension in Elias's body grew tighter with each passing minute. He reminded himself constantly, "Stay calm, speak clearly, trust is your weapon." When the shuttle reached the Kolvar docking zone, the commander's ship awaited. It was massive, black and angular, exuding power and intimidation. Elias docked carefully, double-checking the lock sequence. A hatch opened, and he was escorted to a private chamber. Commander Varric stood there, tall, imposing, his skin a dark gray with red patterns. His eyes were sharp and calculating, studying Elias like a predator assessing prey. "You are the human who spoke to the Sarathi?" Varric's voice was low but carried authority. "I am Elias Rourke," Elias replied steadily. "I speak for peace. Nothing more." Varric studied him in silence for several long moments. "Why should I believe your words? Humans are outsiders. You have no stake in our war." Elias took a slow breath. "I have no stake, yes, but that is exactly why I can speak freely. I am not bound by hatred or ambition in this matter. I only speak truth, that attacking the relay hub will cost both sides more than it is worth." The commander's eyes narrowed. "And if I do not listen?" "Then the war continues," Elias said quietly. "But if you do, thousands of lives may be spared. You can end a battle before it begins, without more bloodshed." Varric leaned back, silent again, weighing each word. Elias could feel the pressure building. One wrong glance or hesitation could trigger an order to kill him. Finally, Varric spoke. "Your words are unusual. We expect outsiders to lie or to be careless. You are neither. I will hear more." Elias exhaled softly, but he did not relax. The real test had just begun. Meanwhile, back on Varelia Station, Sariva monitored encrypted channels, tracking Elias's progress. Every message from him was brief, coded, but she felt each one as though it were a heartbeat. She knew the danger he faced. Every second counted. Every wrong move could end the mission before it truly began. She glanced at the hidden council, their faces tense but focused. They waited for updates, ready to act if something went wrong. And they all understood the same truth. Elias's choice to accept the mission had shifted the balance. The choice under pressure had been made. Now the outcome depended on courage, patience, and the fragile power of trust. Elias had stepped into a path from which there was no turning back. Every decision, every word, and every moment could change the future of not just the Sarathi and Kolvar, but countless lives caught in the war, and he was ready to face it. Elias sat across from Commander Varric, the Kolvar officer whose reputation for caution and efficiency made him both feared and respected. The small chamber was silent except for the low hum of the station's energy systems. Outside the reinforced walls, the vast darkness of space stretched endlessly, but inside, every second felt heavier than any battlefield Elias had ever faced. Varric's red, patterned eyes studied him carefully. "You speak for peace, human," he said. "Yet you carry no soldiers, no weapons, no proof of power. Why should I believe you?" Elias leaned forward slightly. "Because I have nothing to gain from lying, and because I am here only to prevent unnecessary loss. Both sides are preparing to strike, and both sides will suffer if the battle happens." Varric's gaze did not waver. "And if I attack anyway?" "Then the war continues," Elias replied steadily. "But if you listen, Commander, you have the chance to stop it before it starts. Thousands of lives saved, families spared, plans and strategies preserved instead of destroyed in a single battle." The commander's lips pressed together. Elias could feel the tension in the room rising. Every word mattered. One misstep could end the conversation and his life. "You are unusually calm for a human in a situation like this," Varric said. "Most outsiders would tremble. Most would beg or falter." Elias allowed himself a small, controlled smile. "We survive by learning to control fear. It does not disappear, but we use it rather than let it control us." For a long moment, Varric said nothing. Then he leaned back, folding his hands. "You are not what I expected. You speak with certainty, yet you carry nothing but words. Words are fragile. I wonder if they are enough." "They are fragile," Elias admitted. "But they are all I have. And sometimes all it takes is a few honest words to change the course of events." Varric's eyes softened just a fraction. Elias could sense curiosity growing beneath the commander's strict exterior. It was subtle, but it was there. "I will consider your proposal," Varric said finally. "But I require proof that this is not a trick. The Sarathi will claim any hesitation as weakness. You must show me that your intentions are genuine." Elias nodded. "I expected no less. You may contact the Sarathi through my channel. I will remain here open and unafraid until you reach your decision." Back on Varelia Station, Scifi and the Hidden Council monitored the encrypted communications. Every message from Elias arrived in fragments, carefully coded, but the tension in each transmission was clear. The council members leaned over holographic displays, tracing fleet movements and preparing contingency plans. "This is the moment," Scifi whispered. "If he succeeds, peace is possible. If he fails—" Her voice trailed off. The thought of failure was unspoken but heavy in the air. The council waited, silent, while the minutes stretched like hours. Then the first message arrived. "Varric is listening. We have begun dialogue." A small cheer escaped one of the human observers. Scifi did not move. She only nodded, her face calm. Every second was crucial. In the chamber with Commander Varric, Elias spoke carefully, emphasizing points that the Kolvar valued: efficiency, strategy, and the preservation of resources. He did not speak of morality or emotion, only facts, risks, and benefits. "The Sarathi plan to capture this relay hub," Elias explained. "If both sides commit to full-scale assault, thousands will die on both sides. Supplies will be destroyed, fleets will be scattered, and the hub may be lost to the wrong hands anyway. There is no advantage in fighting this battle if it can be avoided." Varric's expression did not change, but his eyes followed Elias closely. "And if they refuse to negotiate?" "Then the risk remains," Elias said honestly. "But that does not mean it is impossible. I have a channel to Scifi and the Hidden Council. We can create a controlled ceasefire in this sector, enough to prevent unnecessary losses." Varric's fingers tapped against the table. Silence filled the room. Again. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I will allow your plan to proceed. But know this: if this fails, the consequences for you will be severe." Elias exhaled slowly. Relief washed over him, but he did not relax. There was still work to do. The next hours were tense and precise. Elias coordinated with Scifi and the hidden council through the secure channel. Movements were adjusted, signals exchanged, and fleets diverted. The Kolvar agreed to hold positions temporarily while communications were established with Sarathi forces in the sector. By mid-cycle, small ships carrying messages and instructions began moving quietly across the contested zones. Elias watched the displays carefully, confirming each step. Every successful action was a small victory, every misstep a potential disaster. At one point, a Kolvar commander questioned the instructions. Elias answered calmly, using facts, logic, and careful reasoning. The commander accepted without argument, demonstrating the fragile power of trust he had built in a few hours. Finally, as the last messages were delivered, Sariva's voice came through the comm. "Elias, it worked. They have agreed to a temporary ceasefire in this sector. No attacks for 48 hours. Elias leaned back in his seat, exhaustion hitting him suddenly. 48 hours? That's enough to prove peace is possible. Yes, Sariva replied softly. You have done more than survive a mission. You have created a chance for our people to see that words can be stronger than weapons. Elias allowed himself a faint smile. I only spoke what I saw. You and your council made it real. Back on Varelia Station, the hidden council gathered. For the first time in weeks, there was a sense of relief. The temporary ceasefire was holding. Ships from both sides hovered near the relay hub without conflict. Sariva looked at Elias through the secure comm link. You have given us hope, not just for this battle, but for what can come next. Elias nodded, tired but satisfied. Then it's time to build on that hope. This is only the beginning. The human liaison returned to his quarters, watching the artificial sunset over the station. It was quiet, peaceful, a stark contrast to the tension of the last days. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine a future where trust, not violence, could guide decisions. Sariva's words echoed in his mind. Trust is your strongest weapon. Elias understood now that humans were capable of more than survival. They were capable of connecting, building bridges, and creating peace where others only saw war. And in that moment, he felt the meaning of being human, the ability to stand firm, speak honestly, and make a difference in the lives of countless beings. The war was not over. There were still battles to face, still negotiations to hold, still lives to protect. But for the first time, there was a path forward. Elias looked out into space, the stars shining bright against the black canvas. Somewhere out there, Sariva and her people were taking their first steps toward a new alliance, one built on trust, courage, and the shared hope that peace could exist even in a universe scarred by war. And for the first time, Elias smiled. Freely, knowing that he had not just survived, he had helped create something far greater than himself. The story ends on a note of hope, HFY inspiration, and a demonstration of human courage, ingenuity, and diplomacy.